Let's start nice and comfy down on the back. We're coming down to a position where the hips are totally free. They don't have to support our body weight, so we get a little bit of freedom to play around with them without having to work too hard just yet. That will come later. But first we'll just settle. Finding a comfortable spot for your feet to rest. Drawing your attention from the mind into the hips, almost like you're shining a flashlight right into that area. And you can think right now, is there any sensation there? Do I notice a feeling of tightness or discomfort, or maybe the hips are happy? And you can also take your brain and purposely look back at the last couple of days and just think, were there any times when you had discomfort or pain here? Was there anything at all that you noticed about this part of the body? And if not, we'll have plenty of time to notice things today. Okay, start to bring knees back towards your chest. And we'll start with our push and pull movement. Rock the knees away, pull the knees toward you. The focus of that movement is actually the pressure at the back of the pelvis, rocking up and down on the sacrum. So we get this sense of settling. Okay, then switch the direction, start to rock the knees from side to side. Watch that pressure roll from one side of the lower back and back of the pelvis to the other side. Coming toward the center. Okay, now put that together into a circle, like you are outlining the perimeter of the low back. And then switch. Those circular movements tend to require more coordination. A round edge is a little more complex than a straight line, so it makes our brain work a bit harder. A little more coordination between the muscles. Okay, come into center and do that a couple times with no hands so it gets more active. We start to circle the knees up and around. And then other direction. Okay, come into the middle. Send your feet up toward the ceiling. Create a little bit of space in between the feet. And we'll start to turn the toes in toward each other. Pigeon toe. Turn so you can see. There we go. All right, so pigeon toed a little bit. Come back into neutral and roll out like a ballerina. Into neutral, turn in and out. It's kind of a small movement when we have the legs in this position. And notice if rotating one way or the other feels a little more difficult. Okay, good. Bend your knees. And we will do a slightly larger version of that. So with your knees bent, you're going to keep your knees together and open your feet away from each other. It's internal rotation, so this is the weird one. Feet come back together, knees open. There's external rotation. Okay, play back and forth with those two. Nice and slow. Where do you feel that coming from? Where's the effort? And making sure that you're not pushing so hard into that movement that other parts of the body try to jump in. Like if you feel yourself gripping your stomach, your back, your feet, maybe your chin or your neck. Really just focus it in the hip. Okay, pull the knees in. And we'll take a little rock right up into sitting. Nice tall sit. Lift up through the spine. You can pull on the shins to get even taller. And it wouldn't be a hip class if we didn't do some knee rocking. So we'll let the knees fall over to one side. Find that kind of mermaid shape with your legs. Up through the middle and over to the other side. One of the most balanced hip movements because we get internal and external rotation. Okay, maybe the spine is looking for a little bit of a twist. You can turn and hold that outer knee like you're looking behind you. Letting all those things warm up, noticing those details. Okay, so this rocking back and forth is really like loosening up the things around the hips. And then we come into how do we create support and strength here. So in your little zigzag legs, we're going to use the trunk. You might even push with a hand to come up onto the shins. So we come into that high kneel. The really important part of this is actually lowering down as slowly as you can. Gravity wants you to plop down quickly, but when we slow it down, let yourself land on the mat as gently as you can. That really helps to build strength. Rock over to the other side, roll up onto the shins, slowly lower down. Over to the other side. The slower you go, the more this movement's going to work for you. Okay, the next time you roll over toward one side, you're going to just kind of bow yourself over the legs so it gives you a little bit of an extra stretch. And then come up into your lift. Last one on this side. Really slow, place yourself down. Over to the other side, little bow over the legs. As you rise up, lift onto the shins. Come down really slowly. Okay, good. Hips are warm and ready. Swing on over into tabletop. And we'll reach the hips back. You can tuck the toes underneath, give that good reach back through the sit bones. And we'll scoop it forward onto the belly, find your cobra. But it's a fun cobra. It's a light and swaying cobra. So you can let the shoulders rock from side to side. You might turn the head from side to side. Upper body has some freedom to move. And then when you're ready, lower that down, press into the floor, come all the way back. So we're going to rock forward and back a couple times with a little extra focus on the inner thigh. So we have knees about hip distance apart right now. And we can rock back and then rock forward and find a little bit of a back bend. It might take a little bit of playing around to find just the right hand position, kind of where the hands can plant so you can hinge the hips forward and back. But then the next time you start to come back, widen your knees just a couple inches, kind of approaching the edges of the mat. Rock forward, rock back. Going slowly enough so you can work into that sensation. Back bend is going to feel different And as you shift the hips back, you might get a little more attention on the inner thigh. But we'll see, maybe you want to go a little wider. Bring that rocking movement in. So it's kind of approaching frog pose, but we're not quite there. It's like a nicer version of frog. Okay, last one. Just warming up the inner hip. Okay, then as you come through center, walk the knees back into their normal spot where they like to be. And then we're going to lift up onto the knees. Find a high kneel. And we'll start to focus on the inside, the front of the hip and the front abdominal wall with just a little rock back. Kind of a small movement, rocking back and coming forward. The movement is actually happening at your knee, interestingly, but the muscles that are working are up in the thighs and in the belly. Okay, the next time you rock back and come up, find your neutral kneel. We're going to shift our weight over onto the left knee. Free your right leg, and as slowly as you can, we're going to step that foot up to the top of the mat. Use your arms. Try to slow it down as best you can. It's a lot like if you ever see somebody on a tightrope or like a slack line, you kind of use your arms to counterbalance yourself to try to keep control. Try being the key word there. Okay, lean into your low lunge. Bring the arms up. So while you're in your low lunge, ever so slightly think about tucking your tailbone under. And then notice the experience of opening in the front of the hip. Just that little drop back with the pelvis. Okay, then we're going to drop the hands down, tuck the back toe underneath, and we'll open the right arm up into a big twist. So if the right arm doesn't want to hang out up here, it is very welcome to plant on your knee or on your leg if it doesn't want to stay lifted that whole time. We're going to start to lift and lower through the pelvis, almost like there's a giant suction cup on the back of your pelvis that is lifting it up and lowering it down. Except there is no suction cup. It's just your hip muscles that have to do that. And it's kind of a sense of when you're lifting, it's almost like you're drawing your feet toward each other. They won't move, but there's a sense of contraction. And as you lower down, there's a sense of opening and spaciousness. Drawing up, sinking down. All right, good. Drop that back knee down. And we will come back the same way we got up there. So you're going to lift yourself up into your lunge. Start to shift your weight back onto your supporting knee. And sometimes it's harder to come back, actually. Try to lift your foot up and bring it toward you as slowly as you can. Okay, good. Big lift up. Exhale, swing down into your child's pose. Maybe wrap the hands back around the feet. See how low back is doing. And we'll come back up. Okay, bring the hands toward the chest. A couple little rock backs. This is probably a little bit more like quad focused. I mean, it still crosses the hip joint. It's not a major hip muscle the way that we think about it, but it still gets attention. Okay, come up to center. We're going to step the other leg up. Shift your weight to the right. Take your time. Slower is better with this one. Slower is harder. And that foot makes its way up. Using the arms for balance, and let it land. Good. Inhale, low lunge. Do that same gentle adjustment. It probably won't look like anything is happening in your lunge, but hopefully you'll feel some kind of internal experience as you tuck the tailbone down slightly, creates some extra space down through your low back, and it opens up the front of the hip. So if you spend a lot of time sitting during the day, that little adjustment whenever you do lunge is a nice way to just balance out a lot of time sitting. Okay, we come down with the hands. We're going to plant the right hand, lift the right knee, either open the left arm up into your big twist, or the left hand can just hang out on your knee if it wants support. And we bring our attention to the back of the sacrum, like that imaginary suction cup, pulling you up, dropping you down. Feeling where the effort comes from in your legs to create that movement in the pelvis. And the next time that you lower down, you sink into gravity, you can lower that back knee down. We'll bring the hands down onto the mat, and we're just going to step ourselves up this time. So whatever you want to do to hop, skip, or jump to get up to the top, find your forward bend. And it's actually fine if your feet are a little wider than usual. That's okay, just go with it. See how that feels in a forward bend. Inhale, start to lift up against gravity. Maybe the arms come back to squeeze the shoulder blades, a little ski jumper for posture. Big expansive inhale, feel that broadness across the rib cage. Exhale, forward fold. And then we'll inhale all the way up into standing. Okay, so my favorite pose to play with when we're working on the hips is tree pose. Classic yoga pose, we do it all the time, but it feels completely different when we do an active version of it. So we shall plant a toe on the floor, and that toe, your big toe becomes like a kickstand. So we can open and close. And really try to go both ways. With close, it's almost like you're trying to cross your leg on top of the other one, so you get a little bit of internal rotation. And then, of course, the external rotation that we know in tree. Roll it in. See if you can find a little bit of a stretch there. Open it out. When I'm doing this, I'll usually put my hands right on the sides of the hips so that the whole pelvis doesn't try to take over. That's a really common, clever cheat that our brain will try to do. Like, hey, it's easier to do it this way. I'm just going to do this. The next time you open your knee, we're going to start to slide up an imaginary line, just as high as you can, and slide down. Okay, a couple times like that. Feel that weird sensation of effort deep in your hip. Okay, then the next time you come up to the top, you get to decide, do you want to stay just like that? Do you want to plant your foot like you normally do in tree? It's up to you. It's up to you how hard you want to work in that pose. There's no wrong answer. Bring the arms up, find some length. Exhale, release the arms, release the leg. Shake it out. And just stand for a moment. Send your awareness to that ring around the pelvis. What do you feel here? Can you notice a difference between the sides when you're halfway through? It's so interesting. Okay, other leg. Find your big toe and create that little hinge for your door. The pelvis itself stays still, so it's just that ball and socket joint rolling in, rolling out. And the next time you open, start to slide up and down the imaginary line, a little bit of space. It's so tempting, you know, usually when we do tree pose, we just go down, grab our foot, plant it somewhere. So our hip doesn't get this opportunity to really feel, what is it like to do this on my own? All right, go ahead and plant your foot if you want to, or you can hover. That's always an option. A little bit of upward length. Exhale, release that down. Okay, you're even now. And we'll take the hands, maybe like the outside of the fist, and just kind of bounce around that area. Your butt muscles are your hip muscles, by the way. Sometimes we don't realize that, but they are. They're very important. So give them a free little massage, and then come up to the top of the mat. One of the things that we work back and forth with a lot here is creating effort when we need it, strength and support when we need it, and as soon as we're done with it, letting it go. So it doesn't turn into this lingering tension that accumulates in our body. The hips are definitely one of those areas that will kind of gather tension that we don't need. So encouraging that process of letting go. Okay, inhale, give yourself a stretch up. Exhale, fold over the legs. And we'll step one leg back and then the other leg back, finding your way into table and then back into down or into high child's pose. Okay, we'll just roll forward to come out onto the belly. Maybe a sphinx this time, a little bit more support. Okay, and then from your sphinx, go ahead and bend one knee and sweep it up to the side so we have a half frog, about 90 degrees at the hip and knee, about. Doesn't have to go all the way up. Okay, and here's where things get really interesting with hip rotation. That foot is going to come up just a couple inches and very slowly lower down. It's the slow lowering where we build control. The lift is where we build strength. The lowering is where we build control. So make sure you're working both sides of that movement. And don't go so high that you feel like you're going to get a hip cramp. This is one of those movements where it's like, is it going to cramp? So don't push too hard. All right, that one is good. Slide that one back. Give a good rock back and forth with your hips and your legs. No accumulating tension. When we're done with effort, it can leave. Okay, bend the other knee. Bring that up into your frog, your half frog. And we start to think, what does it feel like to lift the foot? Turn the knee gently toward the floor and slowly release. This hip might have a very different sensation than the other one. That's okay. Lower that one down, slide the legs back into the middle, and just work your way down toward the floor. You might stack the hands and rest the forehead on the hands. Give a good rock side to side with the whole pelvis. Let the legs just wiggle as the body rocks. Whatever effort, whatever work I am done with, I let it go so that I can be in that space of rest. Finding a little moment of stillness, letting that curious awareness rest in your body. What is this experience right now? And we'll take some slow movements to make our way back up into sitting. And there, as you come into cross-legged, we all have a favorite leg. So this is my favorite way of sitting, with my left leg in a little closer. So go ahead and switch. Go to the less comfortable cross-legged, and you might feel a little bit of that imbalance. We've done a lot of work around this whole ring of the body, so it's warm, it's ready for it, but interesting to notice our little habits that we don't always pay attention to. And then as we close out our practice, just thinking about what the last few days or what the last week has been like, and really trying to connect the dots. Seeing, where does that experience show up in my body? Where do I experience stress in my body? Rather than ignoring that, letting your attention land on it so you get to know yourself better. And in that process, we get better at listening to the body and knowing what it's trying to tell us. And I thank you for practicing with me today, for exploring the hips, doing some movement, connecting to our body.